Welcome to the 3 Steps to Startup Masterclass series, brought to you by Tech Connect West Virginia, Innova Commercialization Group, and the West Virginia Jobs Investment Trust. This masterclass series is part of the 3 Steps to Startup initiative. The goal of 3 Steps is to provide early-stage entrepreneurs with critical assistance and structured guidance for innovation commercialization, from ideation to product launch and market entry. 3 Steps to Startup is made possible by support from the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation. This is Masterclass number 3, Finding, Keeping, and Developing the Right Customers. Today's Masterclass is one in a series, in which viewers will have an opportunity to gain deep insights and actionable intelligence designed to help entrepreneurs launch and grow their ventures. Within each masterclass, we will take a deep dive into a specific topic to teach the what, how, and why, so that you, the viewer, may be better informed and duly prepared to apply your newfound wisdom in a manner that will positively impact your new or early-stage venture. Here's a preview of the concepts we will be covering in this masterclass, each of which is designed to help you connect dots, grow professionally, and become a more efficient and effective entrepreneur. This masterclass is all about how a startup can find, keep, and develop the right customers. We will begin by examining the difference between customers and users, and how each group can have impact upon a new business. We will cover why it's so important to find the right customers, and how to identify right versus wrong. We will discuss each of the 4 primary methods for dividing up the total available population into smaller groupings for more efficient and effective marketing. We will walk through each of the 4 stages of Steve Blank's customer development model, from customer discovery through company building. We will discuss how startups can gain early traction with customers and users, and we will walk through the process of customer acquisition and all the costs associated with gaining new customers, called the Customer Acquisition Cost, or CAC. Finally, we will break down the adoption of innovation curve and each of the 5 customer categories. And we will discuss how to cross the chasm to achieve product market fit. We will end this masterclass by posing several questions for reflection as you marinate on all we've shared with you today, and by sharing additional resources you might choose to leverage for your own extended learning. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. When considering upon whom a company should focus their efforts and attention, it's important to understand the difference between customers and users, and the roles they each play in the customer buying experience. As their titles may imply, customers buy things, and users use things. And so a business should simply focus all their efforts and attention on the customers, right? Well, not exactly. Customers are often the users as well as the buyers, but not always. For example, a parent with a child in diapers is the customer who completes the transaction, while the child is the actual user of the product being purchased. A diaper company must understand the buying behavior of the customer as far as what factors influence the parent's buying decisions, such as price, features, and benefits, and how often they make diaper purchases, for example. The company should also continue to seek deeper understanding of the needs of the child in designing the diaper to ensure that the underlying problem for which the product exists is being solved effectively. If the product or service being sold doesn't relieve the pains, problems, and discomforts experienced by the user, while simultaneously addressing the needs of the buyer, the entire transaction will be off balance. Businesses must conduct the due diligence needed to understand the wants, needs, pains, and fears of both users and customers. By taking a dual focus of both understanding buyer behavior and constant empathy-driven product innovation, a startup can improve their chances of finding, attracting, and retaining the right customers and building a sustainable business. As we begin today's discussion in earnest, it's crucial that we start by defining what we mean by the right customers. Too often, early-stage businesses get caught up in the trap of acquiring as many customers as possible in order to further validate their business model and to clearly demonstrate early significant traction for potential investors. We say this is a trap because not everyone who pays for your product or service is an ideal customer. Acquiring the wrong customers can lead to high customer churn, poor customer reviews, and a host of other headaches. Trying to attract and retain the wrong customers can lead to a reduction in profit due to having to spend more time, money, and effort on keeping a wrong customer satisfied. While your attention is focused on the wrong customer, you will miss opportunities to engage with the right ones. With the wrong customer, nothing you do will ever be enough, and you will always come up short. These types of relationships are parasitic, and you, the host, will lose in the end. On the other hand, interactions with the right customers won't feel like such a struggle. The right customer will appreciate your solution to a problem or need they've been experiencing. They will understand that you have a business to run and that you must make a reasonable profit, or the solution you provide and the company behind the solution will dry up and blow away. The right customer will identify with your company mission and will align with the values you set forth to define your company culture. The relationship between customer and company will feel right and will be a pleasure for both parties. A business is more likely to gain a brand loyalist who will keep coming back despite the best efforts of the competition to lure them away, and a brand evangelist who will tell others and help generate brand awareness when a relationship exists with the right customer. Be specific and very selective when considering who is the right customer for your business. The most valuable resource we have is our time, and there's an old saying that time is money. As such, it's of vital importance that a startup manages the time of its people effectively, so as to not be wasteful with such a valuable resource. For those members of the startup team tasked with finding, attracting, and securing new customers, as well as retaining current customers, it surely pays to have a well-defined target in place, or else any person with a pulse may appear to be a great potential customer. We discussed a little earlier the importance of finding the right customer. The act of creating a well-defined target customer is called customer segmentation. By taking the total available population and carving it up into smaller subsets based on shared characteristics, a business can dramatically shrink down the number of potential candidates it will seek to woo. A startup or early-stage business may have only one or a handful of customer segments they are targeting. The more clearly the startup understands their target customer segment or segments, the better the startup can predict and then track consumer behavior, and the more efficiently the startup can execute its marketing and customer retention and development efforts. For each segment, effort is required to determine the exact characteristics of an ideal customer within that segment. These characteristics are commonly divided across 4 primary categories: demographics, geographics, psychographics, and behavior or values. The act of segmentation may consider the characteristics from either a single or multiple categories, depending on the level of detail desired. Although there are additional methods that can be used to conduct customer segmentation at an increasingly deeper level, let's take a closer look at each of the 4 primary categories now. Geographic segmentation pertains to the physical environment where a group of potential customers is located. This form of segmentation involves parsing out potential customers based on the region where they live, work, or play. There are 6 primary parameters that may be used to segment: location, climate, culture, population, urbanicity, and language. Location may be the most obvious and could be a neighborhood, a city, a state, a country, or a continent. Climate has to do with the prevailing weather conditions within a geographic region. Culture is the customs, sensitivities, and institutions held and practiced by a specific nation, people, or social group. Population can mean either population density or population type. Urbanicity refers to a description of a specific geographic area as being urban, suburban, or rural in nature. Last but not least, language corresponds to the dominant language spoken by the group of people being targeted. Psychographic segmentation examines characteristics related to why customers buy, such as their beliefs, activities, values, social status, or personality. Qualitative data gleaned about the psychological profile of a particular segment can provide compelling insights into buyer behavior and how a product or service may be used once purchased. Gaining a familiarity with how an ideal customer may think and feel is necessary for creating an accurate customer persona. a qualitative and quantitative description of an imaginary person that closely resembles an ideal customer, and which may be used to design effective marketing efforts. There are 5 primary variables related to psychographic segmentation: personality, lifestyle, social status, activities, interests and opinions, and attitudes. Personality is a description of the observable traits a person exhibits, such as introversion or creativity or optimism. Lifestyle is a combination of the habits, tastes, and moral standards kept by a group of people that can describe their way of life, and which may include things like activity level, spending habits, and social proclivities. Social status is the relative rank, standing, or level of importance or respect, along with all requisite rights and duties held by a person or group of people within a specific society. The activities, interests, and opinions, or AIO, of a group is related to items such as the group's hobbies, enthusiasms, or preferences for sports, politics, or television, for example. A group's attitudes are formed as a result of their upbringing and cultural background, and these intangible characteristics will offer insights into the true nature of a defined group. Demographic segmentation may be the most familiar method of segmentation. It is the method that separates groups based on common traits, and this type of segmentation may be used in either a business-to-consumer or B2C setting, or within a business-to-business or B2B setting. Commonly used B2C demographic traits include age, income, gender, education, marital status, and occupation. When segmenting within a B2B environment, commonly used traits include company size, industry type, and company role or job title for individuals being targeted. Behavioral segmentation is a method for creating groups based on the prior behavior or tendencies of its members, especially in relation to behaviors related to a specific brand. Examples of the types of behaviors used to segment in this manner include product or service usage rate, loyalty to a particular brand, and overall knowledge of a brand and the brand's products or services. The 4 primary methods of customer segmentation that we've discussed offer a mix of qualitative and quantitative data and characteristics that may be used by a startup that wishes to better understand and more effectively target and attract a specific segment of the population. Better understanding equates to actionable insights that will inform a startup's customer development strategy. Actions informed by insights create greater efficiencies and more meaningful customer engagement. Efficiency equates to the old adage that a penny saved is a penny earned. Engaged customers make purchases and often evangelize for the brand they love, helping the startup to gain additional customers as a result. Whether using one or many of these segmentation strategies simultaneously, the aim is for the startup to take a targeted approach in attracting, developing, and retaining its customers. A model is defined as an informative representation of an object, person, or system that is used to break down complex ideas into a simpler, more palatable form for easier digestion. In this instance, we have something called the Customer Development Model, brought to us by Steve Blank, a very successful and influential American entrepreneur, educator, author, and speaker. Blank is credited with creating the customer development methodology in the 1990s that launched the Lean Startup movement popularized by author Eric Ries in his 2011 book, The Lean Startup. The customer development model is designed to pair with the startup's product development activities by providing an ongoing stream of actionable insights that will inform the pivots, iterations, and innovations inherent in the process of developing a successful product or service. The model breaks down the customer-related activities conducted by a startup and parses them out into 4 distinct waypoints with measurable milestones as the startup moves from one step to the next. The model emphasizes continuous learning and discovery ahead of execution, and that hypotheses posed must be tested by getting out of the building and in front of customers where theory is replaced with reality. Intentional empathy, childlike curiosity, and keen listening and observation skills are crucial for success with this model, and ultimately for startup success in general. Let's now look at each of the 4 steps within the model. Step 1. Customer discovery. Step 1 suggests that every startup has two fundamental hypotheses that must be tested and validated, invalidated, or modified as a result of what is learned during this step. Hypothesis 1 is that a startup fully understands the meaningful problems being experienced by their target market. Hypothesis 2 is that a startup's product concept fully solves their target market's problem. In order to test both hypotheses, a startup must pause all selling activities and resist confirmation bias by reigniting their passion to solve a meaningful problem, getting super curious again, and then watching and listening to what their would-be customers are telling them. This cannot be done from within the four walls of the startup's offices, behind the safe confines of a desk, telephone, or computer screen. This should not be delegated from a founder to a member of the team. Customer discovery is a contact sport and must be done outside the building and in the presence of living, breathing, and often unpredictable customers. The customer discovery phase is coming to an end when customer interviews are no longer producing any relevant new information or actionable insights. In order to move forward from step 1 in the development model, a startup must be able to answer several key questions. What are the customer's top problems, and how much will they pay for a solution to these problems? Does the startup's product or service concept solve the intended problem? Do customers agree that it solves the problem? And how much will they pay for your solution? In addition, a startup should gain a clear picture of a day in the life of each of their primary customer archetypes that captures their lives before and after a startup's product. The image will help to catalyze what value is being delivered to the customer as a result of using the product. Also, the startup should be able to develop a pseudo-organizational chart ranking their various customers and users based on how successfully the product solved the problem and the amount the customer is willing to spend for the solution so that certain segments may be prioritized over others. Step 2. Customer validation. There is no customer without an exchange of consideration wherein the customer hands over their cash in exchange for a product that solves a meaningful problem for them. There is no business without customers, and the business will not be sustainable without a steady, reliable stream of customers making purchases. The startup is making a fundamental assertion that they know who their customers are at a deep level. And so this step is all about moving from assumption to validated fact by proving that the startup has truly identified their primary customer segment or segments, that they understand the problems they have, and have determined how best to solve them. If insights gleaned invalidate the startup's critical assumptions, they may need to pivot from their current assumptions and go back through the customer discovery phase. Only after the startup has proven these critical assumptions about their understanding of the target customer segment or segments may they move forward. Customer validation involves experimentation, trial, error, and iteration as startups learn from real customers. As a startup engages more customers, they will deepen their understanding of the sales influencers and the sales cycle and begin to see recognizable patterns that will inform the refinement of their financial model and the sales process. The number of customers a startup must engage to glean these understandings will vary based on the delivery channel the startup uses to provide their solution to their customers, and by the industry in which the startup operates. A high-ticket enterprise-level software solution may only require a handful of customers to provide validation, whereas a less costly digital solution purchased via the web may require hundreds of customer interactions. The goal in this step is to gain the requisite insights needed to inform the development of a sales and delivery model that is repeatable, scalable, and financially viable to offer a reliable customer experience when delivering the solution for an increasing number of customers as the business grows. Once this is done, the startup may move on to the next step in the model. Step 3. Customer creation. At first, the phrase customer creation probably sounds a bit odd. You could be asking yourself, is it actually possible for a startup to create a customer? This concept may seem akin to the works of Dr. Frankenstein, but the process is far less sinister than its name might imply. Within the customer development model, customer creation refers to the process of something called demand stimulation, wherein a startup makes their validated customer base aware of their solution they're offering and helps this customer base to see the inherent value the solution represents. With awareness created and demand stimulated, the customer base is now routed to the startup sales channel or channels created during the customer validation process, resulting in increased sales and market penetration for the startup. The key to customer creation lies in crafting the right message for a specific audience and delivering it in a manner that the audience will readily consume and act upon. In short, we're talking about a highly targeted strategic marketing communications campaign that is aimed at validating customers and which is designed to entice these validated customers to make a purchase. These marketing efforts will extend the customer base beyond the early brand evangelists and will help the startup move towards increased market adoption. The overarching goal is to create a steady, predictable stream of new and, where applicable, repeat customers making purchases so that the startup has a reliable revenue base on which to build the company for the future. Step 4. Company building. Company building is the final phase of Blank's 4-step process, where the startup transitions from one designed for learning and discovery to a well-oiled machine engineered for mission execution. In this phase, the company leadership will make decisions based on the learning which occurred earlier in the process. Thanks to the rapid experimentation and desire for deep customer insights, the company understands their customer segments and can begin to operate with a bit more certainty than before. The company structure takes shape, and individuals wearing many hats give way to functional departments led by upper management, such as a vice president of sales or marketing. The internal organization and company culture are growing and developing at this stage in order to undergird the forthcoming revenue growth as the company pursues more mainstream customers. Business development becomes more formalized now that the startup has taken the time on the front end to fail fast, learn, and iterate, and can now be more deliberate in the execution of the designated business model. A startup in this phase more readily resembles a more mature business, though it would do well to ensure that it maintains its curious nature and remains nimble enough to adjust quickly as needed. In the early going of a startup's life cycle, gaining sufficient interest in the business offering is crucial to help validate the business model and prove to potential investors and partners that the business offers legitimate potential. The gaining of early interest is called traction, and this interest may be demonstrated by both users and customers. Soft traction may include a potential user entering their email address on a website to receive additional information or to request inclusion in future beta testing or early versions. Hard traction involves a customer making a purchase, and this form of traction not only helps to provide proof of potential, it provides the startup with crucial early revenue. Every new business idea remains a hypothetical pretense until they meet someone willing to part with their hard-earned cash in exchange for the startup's product or service. A startup cannot exist off the proceeds from only a single customer, however, and so the startup will need to develop and implement a proven, predictable, and repeatable method for bringing in new customers. The process of bringing in new customers is called customer acquisition, and this process is vital to ensure the startup has the funds to cover basic costs, such as payroll, equipment leases, and marketing, and reinvest a portion towards growing the business. Customer acquisition is a function of marketing and may include a variety of different tactics, from social media campaigns and pay-per-click advertising to billboards and postcards. The key is for the startup to discover what works best for their startup per defined customer segment. As the old saying goes, it takes money to make money, and customer acquisition is no exception. There is a cost associated with the activities needed for a startup to first create awareness of their offering in the minds of their desired customers, and to then provide enough information for the customer to make what is hopefully a favorable buying decision. This is called the customer acquisition cost and may be calculated by totaling all costs associated with acquiring new customers, and then dividing this sum by the total number of new customers acquired. CAC is a vital metric to track so the startup can ensure they are receiving a proper return on their acquisition investment. By tracking CAC, the startup can make informed decisions about the customers they are pursuing and the methods they are using so that adjustments may be made as needed. CAC can also help demonstrate how well the startup knows their intended customers and how their product or service solves a need for them. Startups need to produce real proof that their product or service solves a meaningful problem, and the sooner, the better. The best way to prove to investors, partners, and the world that a startup has the potential for growth and sustainability is to capture early sales. Clicks on a website, likes on social media, and email update registrations are soft forms of validating a business model. Once a customer says they like you by handing over their hard-earned cash, suddenly a hypothetical idea has been transformed into an actual business. More customers equals more momentum, and positive momentum is a good thing for a startup. By examining the adoption of innovation curve, we see that the total population can be divided into 5 categories based on their willingness to accept and adopt new technology. The first of these groups is the innovators. Innovators are the ones among us who are most willing to accept any inherent risk when adopting new technology in exchange for being at the forefront of adoption. A favorite pastime of theirs is to seek out novel technology and secure it before their peers. Innovators represent about 2.5% of the population. Next, we have the early adopters, who represent about 13.5% of the population. A notable characteristic of early adopters is that they tend to have a very high degree of influence upon others, and so purchases or adoptions made by early adopters can allow a company to gain entry to the segments that follow. Early adopters recognize how beneficial new technologies can be and have a utilitarian relationship with technology, leveraging their intuitive vision to guide them when considering their next technology purchase. For a typical tech-based business to gain meaningful market adoption, they must cross the chasm that separates early adopters from the next segment, the early majority. The early majority represents about 34% of the population and is characterized by their above-average social status and their ability to accept change more quickly than average. Once the startup can begin to reliably attract customers in the early majority, it is believed they have achieved something called product-market fit. It is unlikely that a startup will survive unless they are able to move beyond the early adopters and cross the chasm to acquire the mainstream customer base. This is because it is not until this point that enough brand evangelists have been created. A critical mass of brand evangelists only comes out once the startup has crossed the chasm and achieved product-market fit. At the point of product-market fit, a statistically significant number of customers representing the company's target segment or segments are purchasing, using, and sharing with others their delight in their purchase, helping to influence others to purchase the startup's product or service. Author Jeffrey Moore discusses the concept of moving beyond the early adopters in depth in his acclaimed book, Crossing the Chasm. Penetration into the early majority is crucial for mainstream businesses to develop sustainability and hopeful market domination by making their way into the other half of the population represented by the final 2 segments, the late majority and the laggards. Businesses must understand the needs and wants of pre-chasm segments and then recognize how the needs and wants of those on the other side differ slightly in order to differentiate their customer development approach. The early market leans on the technology and the strength of the product, while the mainstream is heavily influenced by the company offering the technology and the status of what others in the market are doing relative to the adoption of the new technology. Businesses must transition their marketing efforts from a technology and product focus to a company and market focus if they truly seek to gain a greater market share by engaging the early majority and beyond. As we move towards wrapping up this masterclass, we'd like to highlight a few of the takeaways we hope you'll be leaving with today as they relate to our topic of solving meaningful problems. Startups typically have very limited resources, and so it is crucial that the business operates as efficiently and effectively as possible. By making the early investment into learning through experimentation, a startup can validate who their ideal customer segments are and how best to engage them. The startup can leverage segmentation techniques to develop a highly target strategic marketing plan to attract new customers as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, according to the return on investment gained from a particular customer segment. As the startup demonstrates an understanding of their customers and their market, they can begin to transition into building the company for the long haul by formalizing departments and evolving their customer acquisition strategies. This more mature-looking company is working to cross the chasm and achieve product-market fit as they begin to capture a larger market share and engage the mainstream market to produce the greater, more reliable revenue needed to create a durable and sustainable company. However, a startup will never reach the sustainable stage until they can prove that a single customer wants their offering, and then parlay this early interest into the demonstrable traction that excites current and potential investors. Learning without application is a form of intellectual collecting. Without applying what you've learned today along the rest of your entrepreneurial journey, you cannot expect dramatic positive improvements. As a means of helping you apply all that we've covered in this masterclass, we have assembled several reflection questions upon which we suggest you marinate as you connect the dots and consider how best to apply your learnings to your new or early-stage venture. Number 1. How can I be sure that I'm targeting the right customers? Number 2. What characteristics should I focus on when describing my ideal customer segment or segments? Number 3. What is the customer development model, and how can following it help me grow my startup? Number 4. How must my business focus adjust if I hope to cross the chasm into the early majority? And number 5. What is product market fit, and how do I know if I have achieved it? If today's content has piqued your interest and you would like to continue to dig into these topics for your own ongoing development, we recommend several resources for your extended learning pleasure. Our resource list includes websites, podcasts, and books relevant to the topics covered today. You may find links to each resource on the 3 Steps to Startup website. Enjoy! Well, we have reached the end of this masterclass, brought to you by Tech Connect West Virginia, Innova Commercialization Group, and the West Virginia Jobs Investment Trust. It's our hope that you learned something today that challenged you to think differently, and which provided the insights you need to take your venture to the next level. To check out additional masterclasses and other valuable resources, or to learn more about the 3 Steps to Startup initiative, please visit 3stepstostartup.com. Thank you for joining us, and we will look forward to being with you for the next 3 Steps to Startup masterclass.